Why should I spend my money with you as opposed to spending my money with Bath and Body Works? And it can't just be because I'm Black owned. Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Genesis Nicole, and I'm here giving you another great video, which is on how to deal with competition within your industry. I feel like at some point we all have to deal with that, whether you're an entrepreneur or if you're just a content creator. It's something that we all struggle with, and I posted a poll in my stories and wanted to see about the feedback on which videos people wanted to see the most. And this was one of the highest requested videos. So it must be something worth talking about. So without further ado, I'm just gonna go ahead and get into these tips. What do you do as an entrepreneur? How do you handle competition? So the first thing that I want to hit on when you're dealing with competition within your industry, whether you're an entrepreneur, a content creator, podcaster, writer, anything of that nature, before you can do anything, my number one tip is just to start with you. What does competition say about you? Before you can look at anyone else's brand, what anyone else is doing, how someone is trying to measure up to you or compete with you, or how you fit with other people that are in your industry, start with you. Can you ask yourself, can you answer some basic questions? With whatever you're doing, why are you doing it? What kind of value do you add to your customer? What sets you apart from other people in your industry? You know, what problem are you solving? Who are you targeting? What is your target customer? And those are just generic questions, but one of the most fundamental questions I feel that you can ask yourself is, why are you doing this? For me personally, it has to be backed by faith. Backed in something where I feel like God is calling me to do that, because there's so many things that can happen in business. And for me, there's just too much uncertainty. I can't really depend on myself. I need to depend on him. That's just my personal opinion. I need to depend on him, because when other people come into the industry and when there's other trials that come, I need to be able to go and say, everything might look crazy. I might have this person doing this. I might have been starting to do this with my business, and now there's this. And, you know, when all of these other worries or areas of concern rise up, I need something that I can draw back to and pull from, which for me is my faith. So it has to start with you. Yes. So before you can look at what anyone else is doing, you have to, I believe that you must start with you. That's the first one. Number two is to do your research, but with doing your research, have balance with doing it. So for me, when I first started, before I ever launched a website, before we did any of that, we sat down and we created a business plan. When you're creating a business plan, to some extent, you have to be aware and cognizant of who your competitors are, because you have to know where you stand, what differentiates you from another person or from another entity. And in order for you to answer that question, you know, you can't just completely ignore your competition. You have to be aware, you have to pay attention to that, but you can't, you know, let it go too far. You have to use that as a tool for you to be able to identify where you stand. For example, like one of my sisters, she makes really good desserts, really good treats. And one of the questions is like, if you're just starting out and you want to sell chocolate covered strawberries, well, what is the going rate in the industry for chocolate covered strawberries? Because what is basically, you need to figure out, what is someone willing to pay for your service? Are there people paying for that? Are there people listening to that? Is there a demand for that product? And if you're just starting out and you don't have any history in the industry, you first have to start with looking at what's currently going on in the market around you. What are people doing? What is the climate? And so in one sense, when it comes to competition, you do have to make yourself aware of what is going on, just in terms of starting a business plan and figuring out where you sit within those areas. But in addition to familiarizing yourself with what's going on in the industry, you have to do, the second part to this is doing your research. For me, I make handmade skincare. Although that market is not heavily regulated, there are still some stipulations. And even just the fact of me saying that it's not heavily regulated, that required me taking time to do research. If you make food, what kind of claims can you put out there? Specifically, I know with skincare, there are some claims that you literally just can't make. Do you look up the FDA? You know, what does the FDA say about how you describe stuff that you put on your website, how you describe products? I can't just be out here saying, oh, I solve eczema with handmade soap. You know, you have to do your research. And so when you do your research, it enables you to show up as a credible source of information. And when you sell to your customer, they notice you're not just selling something to get over on them. Like, you're selling to them based on what you are familiar with, what you personally know. And doesn't mean you have to go to school for it, but you need to be well versed in what you're selling. Do your research. One, so that you can show up as a credible source, so that you actually know what you're selling, so that you're informed about it, and that makes you add value. That makes you valuable to the customer, because you're showing them something that they are not aware of, that they don't know about. So spend time doing your research, number one, on the industry itself, and trying to figure out where you sit, where does your business align, you know, who are your competitors. Being able to answer those questions, it could be in the format of doing a business plan. What does that look like for you? And then also just familiarizing yourself with the industry itself, so that when you show up as a business, you don't come halfway. You know, you're not just out here just doing anything, but you don't know what you're really supposed to be doing. Your customers are going to know that too. So yeah, tip 2 is to do your research and basically have a healthy balance. When you are doing your research and familiarizing yourself with competition, have a healthy balance to the point where it's like, okay, I'm aware, but I'm not using that thing to determine where I put my attention on in my business. You know, like, for example, quick story, one of the biggest questions that I get all the time since I've been in retail, specifically in Orland Mall, there is another big company that sells natural products. It's not Bath and Body Works. There's only one other one. They're big too, like over $1 billion company. I get the question all the time, what makes you different from this other company? Let's just say it was Bath and Body Works. What makes you different from them? And I have to be able to sit there and answer that. And so by doing my research, by familiarizing myself with the competition, I'm not going in doing that so that I can copy them. I'm going in and doing, you know, I don't know their products to a T, but I'm going in to say, hey, well, I know that this company has more of a grocery store feel, whereas my company is more of a luxury feel. Their products are more expensive than mine. All of their products are fresh, but they're not all natural. They're all fresh and they're all handmade, but they're not all natural. All of my products are all natural and they're all handmade, and I don't really focus on the fresh part of it, but just in terms of what is important to me is different from what is important to this other brand. So basically, by doing my research, by familiarizing myself with the competition, I'm also able to communicate that to my customer, because your customer is going to know, why should I spend my money with you as opposed to spending my money with Bath and Body Works? And it can't just be because I'm Black owned. I mean, I don't want it to be like I am Black owned, but for me personally, I want to build a brand that is sustainable and not just built off the color of my skin. Like, do you want this product or you don't? You know, I don't want to just be out here selling bad products just because I'm Black owned. And that's just me. So basically, you know, that's that on that tip. My little ad lib. But do your research and have a healthy balance. Tip number 3 is to work on your craft, which kind of goes into the last tip. It builds off of doing your research. Whatever you go to do, is it able to be presentable to an audience? Can you actually sell that? And I think sometimes we start doing things prematurely. You know, you might be anxious and want to start something, but have you really spent time on that thing? Have you sat with it for a while? Have you let God marinate that a little bit? Put a little seasoning on it. Work on your craft. One of my family members does really well with selling art and pottery. And one of the things that he told me as relates to building my business is to work on my craft. If you are met with an opportunity, if someone really comes to you today and offers you something for what you're doing, or offers to collaborate with you, are you prepared for that? Is your brand prepared for that? How are your labels? How are your ingredients? Do you want to work with a chemist to formulate a product for you? If you're not a product-based business and you're a service-based business, are you able to scale that? You know, without looking at the outside, if you simply just sit and look on the inside, how are you doing with your craft? How are you doing with your gift? Are you fully tending to that? And if you are tending to that, will your gift make room for you based off of the way that you pour into it? That's a solid question to answer. And so with dealing with competition, one way that you set yourself apart from another person is by working on yourself. It seems very simple, but let's just go back to the basics. One reason why my customers shop with me so much is because they feel the presentation is amazing. The customer service is amazing. For the first 3 years in my business, I didn't market. I'm not saying that you shouldn't market your business, side note, but I did not market. For the first 3 years of my business, I was simply focused on building systems. And it did not mean that I needed to be seen, that I needed to be out there, that I needed to be, hey y'all, I'm starting a business. You know, I got a store, look at me. We did this. I went on TV. I've been on the radio. I did, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't time for that. There's a season for everything. And initially, I just put my heels on the ground. And I had people come in my store and say, oh my God, you are doing a really great job. You would never know that you have a store. You would never know that you have a business because you never talk about it. And so in the first few years, I literally had my head in the grind, focusing on my craft, focusing on my business before I ever tried to just put it out there. And so I'm not saying that you should not market your business, but what I am saying is that you should be dedicated to working on your craft before you're interested in you basically competing with anybody else. You got to work on you. A lot of this stuff goes back to you. That's my tip number 3. Tip number 4 is to stay on top of your game when it comes to competition. You can have someone that's very successful, but if you ever become lazy in that success, if you ever wallow in it, sometimes you got to remember there are people that are bigger than you, that are smarter than you, that have more money than you. And I believe that whatever God has for you is for you. However, if you do not remain diligent, if you become lazy and you don't apply yourself with what he's given you, I do believe just like he might have given me 10 talents, he could have gave 10 talents to another person. And God could take somebody else that's willing to take that drive, that energy, and go hard with it while you over here sleeping, doing nothing with what he gave you. Just like, oh, already made my million. We done made it. There's nothing else I gotta do, you know. That's not the way to go. Stay on top of your game. There is this quote. I've seen it so many times, and I'm just going to say it right here on this video. It says, success is not owned, it's rented, and rent is due every day. Just because you hit a milestone in your business, you became successful, you reached some milestone or some achievement that made you feel successful, you do that one, you keep going. You acknowledge it, you honor it, you know, but the key to dealing with competition, there's so many people that could just walk up and start. You don't just want to stop growing. You always want to continue growing. And something I've had to remind myself of recently, you know, I haven't been in school in maybe like 6 years. I haven't been in school in 6 years. And I love to read, but I have not been reading a lot recently. When you stop making yourself learn, when you stop being a learner, when you stop reading, when you stop sharpening your brain, sometimes your brain does not churn things through as quickly. And so I just recently picked up a book and I was reading it, and it's very rich in content. And I just found myself like, man, it's really taking me a lot to process this information. I haven't been in school in a long time. When you in school, it puts you in a discipline of constantly sharpening your brain. You got to kick out a paper. You got to do this research report. You got all this stuff you have to do. So you're constantly being required to use your brain and sharpen those skills. You got to be thinking quickly. But if you have not been exercising that, you gotta keep going. Keep pouring into yourself. Another tip that I will offer, tip number 5, is with your competition, depending on the situation, you could seek to possibly collaborate instead of becoming competitive. So, for example, I know a company that sells soap. I know a company that sells body butter. The competitor that I mentioned earlier in the video sells handmade skincare products. But what I've come to realize by starting with me, figuring out who my target is, what makes me different, by focusing on that, focusing on what I'm here to do, I've realized that although we might sell the exact same product, we serve 2 different audiences. You might sell lotion, I might sell body butter, but guess what? I'm known for my presentation and my packaging. You might be known for having fresh ingredients in your products, and you might want, have people that are really big on that. You might go for more of a hippie type of customer, or more retro, or very healthy, lean, lax type of customer. I'm going for someone that likes luxury, classy individual, like to smell good, not some of that like commercialized, stuff. They want some nice quality stuff, but I also focus on not basically breaking the bank for it. And so I understand that although there are some people that are very similar to me, by doing my research, by starting with me, I've realized that we serve 2 different audiences. And as opposed to competing with this other person and looking at it as a source of, now we have to compete, rah, 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 what I'm saying? I don't need to do that. We can honor each other in our respective spaces. And so even with the company that is in the mall with me, there are some things that I sell that they don't sell. There's some things that they sell that I don't sell. And I've had customers come up to my store and tell me that an employee from that store has sent people to me because we have something that they don't. And so in that case, it just kind of goes back to collaborating over competition. But in order to do that, it takes you being at a place where you are strong emotionally, where things really, can kind of just roll off your shoulder, and you could be more mature about it. And that takes time. And even with that, it's like, what we doing here, But collaboration over competition. The last tip that I want to offer, just to sum all of this up, tip number 6, is just to be authentic and be yourself. You might need to figure out, what is your story? How can you market that? How can you sell that? How can you uniquely express that? It always goes back to God. Why am I here? Why am I doing this business? Why does God want me doing this? That's what I need to find myself focusing on, and that's really all that matters. I don't need to be worried about what the next person is doing. If there is an opportunity for us to collaborate, there might be 2 food restaurants, both sell food, and they might see themselves in competition, but it doesn't have to be, especially if you fully embrace who you are and who God has made you to be. So my last tip is just to be authentic, to be yourself. You are really underserving yourself. If you are someone who copies another brand, if you are you can get inspiration from someone or pull inspiration from different things, but if you just literally suck off of whatever someone else is doing, you're going to be competing with their audience. When you go to do that and you compete yourself with another company or with a brand or with a person or with someone that is doing something that you aspire to do, by putting yourself in that space, your gift is underserved. as long as you are focusing on what someone else is doing, how they're doing it, and trying to copy it and implement it and use that as a map or a guide for your life, by doing that, you are not allowing God to show you what he wants to do through your life. And by doing that, like when you choose to just say, God, what are you doing through me? Not through them. I admire their success. I admire what they're doing. I admire their brand, their company. I admire this person. I admire what they're doing. But Lord, what are you doing with me? Until you're able to kind of get to that point, you might find yourself comparing yourself to another brand, to another success story. And that's not what God would want us to do. He wouldn't want us to be doing that, because we're all fearfully and wonderfully made. We're all made in his image, and we all have something unique to bring to the table, whether that is if you have 10 things to bring to the table, or if you only have one thing to bring to the table. Whatever God gave you, as long as you work that to the best of your capability, that's all that matters. I believe that that's what he will really want from you. And so when it, just to sum this all up, when it comes to competition, it has to be, at some point, I feel like we all have to get centered on, why are we doing what we're doing? Is this about me, or is it about him? If it's about him, then none of this other stuff matters. None of it really matters, as long as I'm doing it for him, which really essentially goes back to, with whatever it is that you're doing it with your heart and with your mind and with your spirit, and not just doing it so that you can be seen and heard and seen as someone big and important or whatever. It's like, why are you doing it? Why are you doing this? Why are you spinning your wheels? So those are just a few tips that I have to share. Y'all, have stories for days. I got stories for days on different things that I've encountered while I've been in business, specifically within this topic. But these are just some of the highlights that I want to mention. Have you struggled? Let me know in the comments. Have you struggled with competing in your industry? What does that look like for you? And which one of these tips do you feel you want to implement into your life to try to push you forward and just have you focus on what God has you doing in this season? So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it was beneficial for you and that you are blessed when you see it. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like my videos, my content, and you want to be a part of my internet family, then please be sure to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.